What does a pharmacist do? Well, most people might answer that a pharmacist dispenses the medications that my doctor prescribes. Now, I work with a ton of great pharmacists, and one thing that I don't generally see is excitement about pills in a vial. And this is probably because pharmacists have been trained to do so much more. So what can you get excited about in your community? To find out, let's go beyond the scripts. Welcome back to Beyond the Scripts. I'm Will Tuft, and with us today we have Scotty Sykes. Now, Scotty Sykes is somebody that most of us who are out on the trade show circuit have probably recognized from years of being out in the industry. Scotty, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Will. Appreciate you having me on today.
So everybody watching, if you're watching the video feed or if you're listening, may probably recognize you, but also be familiar with your family, huh?
That's right. We, Sykes Company here. We've been doing pharmacies for about 35 years. My dad got started in it with some local pharmacies. We went regional from there because we got kind of known for fixing troubled pharmacies, if you will. And from there, it just spread nationally, and here we are today with PioneerRx. So it's been a fun ride, and continues to evolve and change, which keeps it interesting.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that. There are a lot of accountants out there, a lot of financial advisors and financial sectors and specifications. How'd you end up in the pharmacy thing? Was it like your dad was kind of hanging out at the coffee shop in the mornings, hearing the pharmacist complain, or?
Well, this was a long time ago. This was before really a lot of insurances and 50% gross margins. So back in the late 70s, early 80s. And he worked with a few local pharmacies here, and as just a couple of his clients. And he realized, hey, these guys make pretty good money here with these types of margins. And so he started kind of looking for other pharmacies, and the word got out, the quality work and the proactive, approach that we take here. And it got out to some regional wholesalers, and we started picking up some pharmacies that we're looking for specific industry expertise and for pharmacy, and then we got with some national players and got into some trade shows, and that was about in 2010 or so, and then from there it's really just taken off as we've been doing a lot of presentations and getting in front of the industry on accounting and tax topics that are relevant to pharmacies in particular. So that's kind of how it all got going there.
It seems like it's kind of a perfect fit, kind of a natural formation, because especially back then, I feel like pharmacy programs probably didn't focus as much on the business end, on the entrepreneurial end, the financial end. Seems like years ago was probably much more of a, medical training only kind of thing.
Pharmacies out there in general need to see it, because if you're not seeing that opportunity, if you're not reaching out into different areas in your practice and what you're doing, serving your patients in your community, just filling scripts is going to get you behind. So you got to evolve with the times, and especially in this day and age with the post-COVID, so to speak, and where we go from here.
Yeah. I mean, in the past few years, just with the pressure from PBMs and reimbursement, and then, COVID has made everything just that much more challenging in the past, 12 months or so. Like it really seems more important than ever that you can't just concentrate on being a pharmacist anymore. You really have to look at things in a much larger scope if you're an independent pharmacist.
You really do. You have got to. You just can't be a pharmacist out there filling scripts. Unfortunately, we see a lot of pharmacies that are still doing that. They're not looking at clinical services. They're not looking at other revenue opportunities or specializations. They're not vaccinating. The list goes on. And these pharmacies are really going to have a hard time. And these are the pharmacies that, frankly, you see shutting down or really complaining a lot or this or that. The other side of the coin is these pharmacies. The other side is going to say, hey, margins are not doing well with filling scripts. I'm going to get into A, B, and C. I'm going to, do this by marketing to my community in this particular niche here. There's 50% margins with what I'm doing there. And they're just looking at it from a whole different lens. And I can tell you that, with us looking at the books all day, every day for pharmacies, these pharmacies are really fueling their bottom line. Let me tell you, their cash flow, and they're being entrepreneurial in their pharmacy, and that's the way you got to be. And these pharmacies are proving it with the numbers they're producing. In fact, we had a pharmacy I was talking to the other day that's going to be doing. This is crazy. He's got contracts with his community, the schools, and things like that. He's already done. He's planning to do about $1 million to $1.5 million in vaccines revenue between now and probably the summertime. That you talk about pushing to the bottom line. That's just insane what that pharmacy has been able to adapt and do, and the success they're going to get from that. And not only that, they're going to put their name out in the communities and so on and so forth. So, and then you have on the other side pharmacies that are not even doing vaccinations, or if they are, they're not going after it as a true revenue source. So, there's just different mindsets out there, and the pharmacy today, we believe, and we see it with our clients, is you got to be entrepreneurial, you got to be thinking outside the box.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of pharmacists, when they graduated pharmacy school, when they got out of school, vaccines weren't even a thing that pharmacists were doing yet. And now it's such a major piece of 2021 that, wow, you're behind the 8 ball if if you're not doing that yet. I mean, you really, like, you hear about all these pharmacists that are going out and finding that blue water, and that's really where they're making that gap. Do you think that eventually, improving themselves in this new area, here and here and here, do you think that, NCPA's efforts fighting PBMs, do you think there's going to be enough reform that while they're kind of filling that gap over here in the blue water and those new opportunities, that it's going to level out and get back to some of those more profitable margins that, you and your dad saw in the past?
That's a really good question. And that's, nobody knows what's going to happen there. Obviously, what NCPA is doing and the other organizations that and other pharmacies and other groups that are working hard to reform the actual prescription process, so to speak, and the paying process is a very good thing. I think starting at the state level, which has been going on here now, is very positive. Whether something's going to have to eventually change, but to what degree and how that impacts pharmacy remains to be seen. But I think you just got to put the pedal to the metal. And while that's happening, this is your chance to really, like we've been saying, kind of figure out what areas you can specialize in, or how you can, find yourself in the marketplace where you can coordinate care with other providers, clinical type services, being that one-stop shop for healthcare in your community. I think eventually that's where it's all going to go. And I think that's what pharmacies need to start building that foundation right now. And whatever happens with the prescription side, Lord only knows, with the power in play, the power of these organizations have, and getting anything through Congress on a federal level is your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. That's one thing that it's a big topic that everybody kind of hears about, prescription drug prices and this and that. But most people in the world just have no idea how the copay that appears on their receipt gets there, and there's just, that's definitely one of the problems. But so there's a lot of a lot of things to complain or worry about out there for sure, but there's a lot of pharmacies that are doing really well, and so they're growing. You guys have a couple webinar series that kind of focus on that. You guys have courses that are helping pharmacies buy, sell, grow. So you've really kind of tailored some tools in those markets. What are you seeing out there with, pharmacies that are doing well, that are growing, the pharmacies that are opening new locations? How much of that are you seeing? What are they doing different? Is it just is it a mindset? I'm gonna buy while the opportunity is prime right now.
Well, if we're talking about buying pharmacies, what we're seeing a lot of the boomers continue to hold on to their stores. They're not really getting out. They're not retiring. So we're seeing actually a lot of startups because, these pharmacy schools are pumping them out. They're tired of working at Walgreens. They're tired of working at CVS and being a number there. So they can't find a pharmacy to buy. So we're seeing a kind of an uptick in pharmacies to start up, which obviously is a very unique situation that requires a lot of planning and due diligence because the risk for a startup is much higher. So, but we are seeing an uptick in startups. We do see when buying opportunities are out there, we're seeing those really get snatched up pretty quickly. So there's folks out there that want to be in pharmacy, want to implement their ideas and what they think they can bring to the community and to their patients as far as doing things other than filling scripts. And when we talk about what pharmacies are doing to be successful, it is not just filling those prescriptions. It's functional medicine, compounding, taking advantage of the vaccination programs that they're putting in place now, maybe expanding that to other areas, flu, point of care type testing, maybe even doing OTC niche stuff, maybe some supplements that, hey, you got this shot here, or I'm going to give you this medication, but this is going to drop your XXX, whatever it is. And so here's a supplement to counterbalance that. And there's a 50%, 60% margin on that supplement. So it's that entrepreneurial, mindset that these pharmacies have, going back to what you mentioned, it is a mindset that these pharmacies have, and you really have to have going forward from this point.
Yeah, it's a few years ago we identified these enhanced services, and anymore it's like a lot of these are not enhanced services anymore. These are essential services that if you're not doing, you're behind the curve. Again, you need to really, move forward with those offerings. I know CPESN has been huge in just making a lot of those things so much more commonplace. Really, it's like those are essential services now. That's what I always say about MedSync. If you're not doing it, you need to start that immediately because it's such an opening path for everything else that you need to be doing in your pharmacy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually really exciting. It's exciting because, this industry it's always changing. It's been changing for a long time. But, maybe the change has never been maybe more so than it is now with COVID. I think COVID pushed pharmacy forward a couple years otherwise. So it's really exciting to see the opportunity, the hard work that a lot of folks are out there doing to get pharmacies, out there to be the so-called provider and to coordinate care with other providers, to get paid for some of that care, to get paid for outcomes rather than just here, check the box, we did that. So it's exciting to see where pharmacies can fall, or pharmacists can fall into this future, and And, that gets me excited. That gets me excited about the future in pharmacy. And so we'll just have to see. But again, it's just filling those prescriptions, sitting behind the counter all day is not going to get you there. But, like you said, Will, there's things you can do on the prescription side that will maximize what you are doing there, which is obviously MedSync, inventory management, managing receivables, managing staff levels. There's no reason why you can't be a profitable pharmacy just filling scripts, but it's going to be a lot harder.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. You can't lose track of the fundamentals. That's never going to go away, but you have to do so much more now. So with all of the opportunities that have come with COVID, really, I mean, for a pharmacy, that's one of those few businesses that, have been able to really show their value and practice at the top of their game during the COVID crisis, I guess, pandemic. But along with that visibility, those opportunities to engage local businesses, local community groups, through vaccinations, there's probably some interesting growth opportunities that are available. I know the government has had so many different financial kind of assistance programs. Are you seeing pharmacies leverage those programs in any way right now to help grow?
That's a great question, Will. Going off of what we've been talking about, which is kind of, you got your foundation with prescriptions, but looking elsewhere to other areas you can grow revenue, and having, and I've said this, as bad as COVID has been, the relief programs that pharmacies have been able to attain through that have somewhat been a blessing in disguise, because this is cash flow that these pharmacies have been able to add to their balance sheets to really give them an additional leg to really then grow off of with these other revenue opportunities, or maybe venture into other areas that they can focus on. And a strong balance sheet with a strong cash flow is going to help you do that a little easier than otherwise you would have, because instead of just trying to manage that cash flow, you're not really going to be putting 100% effort into maybe these other revenue ideas or programs you want to implement. So that cash infusion from the PPP, which is essentially just cash. Most pharmacies, 99% pharmacies, receive that cash from the PPP. Essentially, it's going to be all forgiven. You're not going to have to pay it back. It's tax-free, essentially. So that was just an influx of cash into these pharmacies. Then you had the EIDL program. Some pharmacies got that. The EIDL grants, there's some credits out there for your employees that you were able to attain, and so on and so forth. So it's really been these relief programs have been really perfect timing in my idea, where these balance sheets are building up, and then you can grow off of that in the future, this year into next year, and so on. So and the tax benefits they've thrown out there in addition to is just preposterous, really, which has been keeping us busy. But there's plenty of cash out there in these relief programs that pharmacies should have been able to obtain. And like I said, a strong balance sheet, you can do a lot. You got a lot of leverage with a strong balance sheet.
Yeah, you mentioned the PPP program. I think pretty much everyone's heard of that. You mentioned another one. It was the IDL. What was, I don't guess I'm familiar with that one.
That's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So that is actually a loan. It was up to 150. Now they expanded it to 500,000. But that is a loan at 3 3/4 interest rate. So very favorable terms. There are conditions on how you use those funds, so you do have to manage that. But you pay it back over 30 years. Payments don't start until January of 2022. So if you meet those requirements, which pretty much anybody could essentially. You could get your hands on a EIDL loan. Of course, there's terms and conditions need to understand about that, but so there's the employee retention tax credits, which most pharmacies are not going to be eligible for, but I got to mention it because they're very significant in terms of relief and cash flow. So we've been taking a look at that. There's changes with the tax where you can pretty much do 100% write-offs, 100% depreciation. You can go back and make those changes when the rules weren't that way years past. For example, if you had USP 800 upgrades or some serious improvements to your pharmacy. So there's just a whole list of ways pharmacies can get that extra cash.
Yeah, I mean, what about drive-through accommodations, curbside accommodations, all of those different practices that pharmacies had to kind of immediately learn and start doing and figure out, is there some relief in that area?
That's a good question. The employee retention tax credit, essentially that was not on our radar at all in 2020, because if you got a PPP, you really couldn't get the ERTC credit. And they changed that at the very end of 2020 with the Consolidated Appropriations Act. So all of a sudden we're like, okay, what is this credit? Because again, 99% of pharmacies got the PPP. We didn't really focus on the ERTC. But when we look at the ERTC, to qualify, you have to have a 50% drop in revenue quarter over quarter. So 2020, 2019, which most pharmacies did not. So you're not going to see a drop in revenue like that. Of course, if you did, there's no requirements that it's due to COVID. It could be really due to anything that's reasonable. I mean, you can't, be split up a company or something like that. But so a 50% drop in revenue, or you experienced a shutdown, and that's where it gets really subjective. You're going to have to really dig into the weeds there. But essentially, most pharmacies were required to stay open, and going and voluntarily closing your doors, which many pharmacies may have done, according to the IRS, is probably not going to get you qualified there. But we had an instance where a pharmacy, to maintain social distancing, had to cut a staff member, a technician, and obviously that impacted his operations, and pretty significantly when you're down a tech. And so we're exploring the credit there. Or if you have an instance where a pharmacy has a cafe or a gift shop, and that was required to close, you could find an eligibility window there. So again, these credits are very substantial. Just something to have on your radar for sure.
Gotcha. So a lot of pharmacies out there probably, if you get that PPP loan, that money has to be spent in a certain way, right?
That's right. You got to use it on payroll costs, which can be pretty much wages, and health insurance is also included in that. And then you got to use it for, or at least 60% has to be payroll. The other 40% can be rent, utilities, those kinds of things. But most pharmacies, you have 24 weeks, what they call the cover period, to use those funds. So most pharmacies will easily be able to use that up for payroll. But if we're talking about the ERTC credit, employee retention tax credit, we just talked about, you have to time those two programs on what you're claiming and how you're claiming those wages, because you cannot double dip on wages. So I can't claim PPP forgiveness on wages here and claim the credit on those same wages I'm claiming forgiveness on. So you do have to, there's some planning involved when we're talking about the two programs. Sure.
So a lot of pharmacies have probably seen, change in day supply, a little bit of change in what kind of prescriptions they're getting for a little while. But overall, I feel like claim volume isn't down that significantly. So if there's this pot of money over here that needs to be spent in a specific way, theoretically, that's going to free up some other funds that pharmacy has available. So in 2021, if a good friend of yours, a client comes to you and says, "Hey, I've got some freed up funds at my pharmacy. Where should I focus that tool?"
It really is going to depend on, each unique situation, obviously, but, um, we like to see, I like to see a cat or current ratio on the balance sheet of about 2.5, 3 to 1. If there's excess, I want to see it closer to 3 to 1. So when we get a 3 to 1 current ratio, that's where I'm going to be comfortable. So if this cash has gotten this current ratio, which current ratio is current assets divided by current liabilities. So if it's 3 to 1, you have $3 of cash, receivables, and inventory for every $1 of current debt. So that's a liquidity ratio in a pharmacy, and we all know cash is king in a pharmacy. So if you're at 3 to 1, you have a nice little cushion there, and that's where I want to see a pharmacy. Now, if that current ratio gets 5, 6, 7 plus to 1, which is pretty rare, but it does happen with little debt or something like that, then we're going to look at maybe leveraging it inside the pharmacy, or even going as far as retirement, some high-powered retirement plan options to sock away that cash and lower their taxable income. So great question, but I would take away from that, get to that 3 to 1 current ratio is your number one goal. Once you get there, see what opportunities can come up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, does that open the door to make big improvements in the pharmacy? What if, my debt to income ratio's pretty good? Is that when I should say, "Hey, I've really been thinking about some automation," or, "Man, we could really use a new delivery vehicle," and kind of double on those benefits of reinvesting into the business?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, if you've got that nice current ratio, you can look at those other opportunities, a new vehicle or an additional vehicle, adding some automation. As you know, if you're adding a robot or something like that, you can finance it. Reasonable terms, generally speaking. That's not going to put a huge damper on your cash flow. You'll be able to write off that whole script system or whatever you're financing pretty much in the year you put it into use. So the tax laws are very generous there. You can write off really any equipment as it stands right now with tax law. So obviously, if you got that current ratio, you're going to be able to see other areas that you can invest in your pharmacy. And absolutely.
Yeah. So how does that break down? I know if, anytime you see that big price tag, automation obviously is not it's not a low ticket item. It's expensive technology. How do you kind of get past that sticker shock? Can you talk me into buying some automation for my pharmacy? Talk me into making that $500,000 or that $250,000 purchase.
Well, first of all, we got to know where you stand currently. So I need to know what your fundamentals are, and this goes back to kind of what our firm is fundamental to, which is fundamental accounting. I need an accurate balance sheet. I need an accurate P&L. I need all the balances tied in. Once I have the data that I can trust, because most pharmacies out there don't have the fundamental accounting in place, which is really unfortunate, but it's true. And so we have to get that fundamental data in place. Then we can look and say, all right, what is our current ratio? What does our debt structure look like right now? Can we afford more debt? Do we need to focus on every other things first before we can kind of look at automation at this point? So we kind of go through that exercise. Once we have a grip on the things we're working on, or we're improving, or we've made the adjustments, then we can say, all right, now let's look at this automation piece. And that could involve, obviously, if you're talking about a $250,000 piece of equipment, we're going to look at, financing that out. We're going to look at those terms. A lot of the capital leases, if you will, with these financing agreements, they may not be clear on the interest rates. You need to be checking those interest rates. You need to run the amortization schedules, work with your CPA to do that, to know what kind of interest rate you're being charged. But that's just one piece we're going to look at. And again, we're going to try and term that out with reasonable rates and make sure that the pharmacy could afford that payment, which hopefully they could. But we're also going to look at the debt structure in the pharmacy as a whole. Are they using a lot of credits? Do they constantly have a lot of credit maxed out? Do they have 3 or 4 car loans and then 2 or 3 short-term loans? What can we do to consolidate, to get debt restructured in the pharmacy, to ease the cash flow burden, to cut down on interest expense, to lower that payment? And so those are all things we're going to be looking at before we really make an investment of that magnitude.
I guess you'd also have to consider your staffing costs, because if you're getting that automation in your pharmacy, you may not need to take on that additional technician. So, that's definitely something to factor in too. Maybe instead of hiring, another technician, you look at a more clinical employee joining your team, and that automation together. It seems like you're getting, a lot of bang for the buck there. So,
right. We do see where the automation will cut about a tech and a half over, after the first 3 months it's in use, if the workflow and the processes are there like it's designed. If you just put the automation in and you kind of just like, all right, let's figure this thing out and let's go with it. You got to have a plan of action when you're putting in automation. What's your goal? What are you trying to do? You're trying to cut that tech out of there. How are we going to do it? You got to think about these things. But for sure, we see pharmacies with the goal of really trimming a staff member. And as we all know, outside of your cost of goods, your payroll is going to be your second highest expense. So anything we can do to trim that payroll down is going to feed to your bottom line.
Yeah. Or, if you have that power tech at your pharmacy, it's not necessarily cutting that tech, but being able to utilize that technician in a much more productive use. If a robot can do something your technician is doing, maybe, there's a better use for that technician with all of those different enhanced services that they could be taking on if they could just free up that technician. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of a big picture to look at, but I feel like really 2021 might be the best year to make that plunge, to have those funds available, to have those tax benefits available. Seems like there's never been a better time.
Yeah, certainly. Again, the relief programs, stronger balance sheets. Hopefully, a lot of these pharmacies didn't just take the money out of the pharmacy, which sometimes you see. They say, "Oh, I got money in the bank," and they'll pull it out. No. Get to that current ratio. Get your balance sheet. Get your pharmacy healthy. Whatever is a little left over, okay, great, you've earned it. But don't put yourself back into the trouble of cash flow issues. But again, you're right. Now's as good a time as any to think about automation for sure.
Yeah, those new Corvettes are really, really cool, but call Parada, call RX Safe, look into automation.
I've seen Porsches, I've seen RVs, I've seen airplanes on depreciation asset schedules. So we've seen pretty much everything out there. Don't be one of those guys.
Yeah, I was talking to my son the other day about that. I love the trend that it seems like conspicuous spending right now is not cool. It's, like when I was a kid, it seemed like that was a very celebrated thing. And now it's kind of like,
Right. But, we'll see a few Teslas out there, but my favorite thing is getting one of those, regular old vehicles and wrapping it with vinyl and having your advertising out there, and you got 2 or 3 of those scooting around your community all day long with your advertising. That's a very inexpensive thing to do. I love it. Gets your name out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely making your pharmacy stand out. Driving around in traffic every day is, it seems like a real easy way to build that brand recognition.
Easy.
So right now we're in tax season. Everybody's kind of like, if they haven't done their taxes already, it seems like we focus on tax season in December when it's too late to do anything. Now here we are coming into mid-year. The people that have you banging your head against that brick wall behind you in December, what would you tell them, mid-year, hey, do this so that December is much easier on you?
Yeah. So thankfully, we work with clients where we don't have that model. So all our clients come October, November, December, they have an idea of what April 15th is going to look like. So we're doing these proactive planning really all year. So we'll start 2021 proactive planning pretty much right after summertime. We'll start rolling projections out and seeing what we can do for the year to minimize taxes, because the bulk of tax planning is going to come before the end of the year. After you reach the end of the year, and if you're right now looking at your 2020 information, hey, what can I do to help me out for 2020? Your options you don't have a lot of options. So, proactive planning first, but to get there, you got to have that fundamental accounting in place. And that requires full accrual balance sheets. Your tax returns are tied into your accounting file. You've got the processes in place for daily, weekly, monthly adjustments for receivables, inventory, accounts payable. All your notes are tied in. Your margins are tied in pretty frequently with some good solid inventory numbers. You're getting DR fees in there to know what's going on there. Your payroll is reconciled. So all those things really give you that fundamental information to say, all right, this is where we are on a real basis. What do we need to do to mitigate taxes? So anybody out there that's scratching their head, looking back at 2020, start with the fundamentals, get that in place, and get with someone who can help you do some proactive planning.
Yeah, I know that's one of those things that I see, like Benjamin Jolly out there. He loves digging into the DIR fees and everything, and it's almost like a whole additional job description at the pharmacies. But there's a lot that, man, it happens behind the scenes. And if you're not really going out and proactively looking for it, it's happening to you instead of just happening in the background. Right.
Yeah. DRs, last year we saw average about 2.6% of revenue was DR fee. Maybe a little closer to 3%, but that's what we saw with our group of pharmacies. And what we saw our pharmacies doing was they were managing their star ratings to the best they could, 5 stars as much as they could, get that star rating as high as possible. We even had some pharmacies that actually, for going back to the automation, if they had that automation in place, they had an extra tech, they put that tech to use, managing that DR fee in the back office, so to speak, and doing whatever they could to manage that. The star ratings or the med sync and all that kind of thing that impact that. So we've seen pharmacies, or in other words, there's a little more control over DR fees than I think a lot of pharmacies think. And we have pharmacies that have shown us that's the case with DRs in the 2 to 3% range when we look at it as a whole for last year.
Yeah, I mean, open enrollment's such a big opportunity to hit that. If that technician, instead of filling scripts, let the automation do that, and let's concentrate on open enrollment coaching, make sure we're moving those patients to the right plan for them, finding those win-win opportunities. There's just so many opportunities if you are really maxing your staff and letting them practice at the top. So I mentioned the brick wall behind you. I was going to ask you about that. I love that old building you're in.
Yeah, this is our famous building. All our videos, we do hundreds of videos. We probably have thousands of videos out there on tax accounting stuff, advisory stuff for pharmacies. And we do it right here in this old brick building, the old peanut mill in Edenton, North Carolina, 5-story, actually tallest building in Edenton, 5-story old peanut mill on the Register of Historic Places. And there's still peanut shells from the 1800s stuck in some of these beams here, but it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I loved going to. And, I spent years as an installer, and I would go out and do a lot of the installations on pharmacies opening up on like the square and small towns across America. And it's always so cool to go into those old historic buildings. I can't tell you how many pharmacies I've been into where the old bank vault is their control cabinet.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So are you guys, I don't know. So to take on like a restoration project like that architecturally, is that like a one-off thing that you guys did, or are you guys kind of into old stuff? Do you have old cars, stuff like that?
Well, Edenton, North Carolina was actually the first capital of North Carolina, and it never got burned during the Civil War. So a quick history lesson. We have Edenton's home to a lot of historic homes from the 1700s, 1800s. A lot of signers of the Declaration were from here. There's old plantation homes here. I mean, this place is really a historic gem, Edenton is, and so we wanted to fit this building to match our community. We rehabbed it and we got a bunch of tax credits while we were at it, because there was a lot of rehab historical structure tax credits, which there's still some out there for those looking at some old pharmacies. But that's kind of how we decided to go about it. We do have some folks here who specialize in these historic structures and getting them rehabbed, if you will.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I love that look.
I think we got the oldest house here in North Carolina that's been identified from 1708 or something like that, right down the street from here. Yep.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So you mentioned that there's 5 stories there. So I'm guessing it's not a 2-man operation there if you have 5 stories of the building.
Right. So we're on 4 stories here. And on the first floor, we have a gym. So we've got a gym to keep us all busy. But at one point, we had about, 40 people here, about 6 mobile, and somewhere around there. But now with COVID, we're down to, we may have 10 people here now, and the rest are mobile out of about 46 folks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maybe 12 are here. Yep.
So you guys have a pretty large team. So if any pharmacies out there are, looking for some financial assistance, some financial guidance rather, plenty of people there to answer the phones in, huh?
We got a large team. Again, I think it's about 46, last I counted, about 13 CPAs. All we do is pharmacies. So this whole team is pharmacy only. And it keeps us busy for sure.
Yeah. I was going to ask you too, when you joined up into the family business there, was there ever any reluctance? Was your father like, hey, come on, you got to join the family business? Or were you like, Dad, I want to be a BMX racer. I don't want to be an accountant.
Well, if I could do one thing else, I would be a golfer. I'm quite a golfer, so I would have done that, but didn't quite make the cut. But anyway, so no, my dad, I have 2 older brothers. They didn't want to carry on the family business back when I decided, hey, I think I'm pretty good at accounting and tax. I think I'm just gonna go work for Dad and see what happens. And so I went for it, and my dad didn't pressure any of us to do anything with Sykes Company here. He just let us make our own minds on all that. And so I made the decision. I wanted to maybe carry on the business one day. None of my other brothers made that call, so I jumped on it. And ever since I really got on board, that's about the time. Not soon thereafter, we really went national on a national basis. And so it's really been a wild ride ever since. Been
Awesome.
fun. It's been fun. Except for this year, this COVID thing has been definitely the hardest. I'm not complaining, but it's been the most difficult time in my career navigating $7 trillion worth of new legislation. Thankfully, I can say that when I look at legislation, when I'm looking at all things that are going through Congress and what's new, I look at it from the lens of pharmacy. So I can thank my lucky stars that that's the case, because if we were dealing with 50 industries here, there's no doubt about it. Most of those industries would miss out on something because there's no way you can keep up. There's just no way. So that's one of the great things about Sykes Company and what we do is we focus only on pharmacy. And so when we're looking at all these changes, and this past year was a great example of that, we're saying, all right, what's in this 1,000-page bill? What does it mean for pharmacy? So that's fun, but it also gives us that unique perspective on things.
Yeah, which I mean, I can't imagine trying to deal with multiple industries. I mean, pharmacy is such its own animal, and it seems like every week it's a new thing too. It wasn't like, hey, here's the plan, run with it. It seems like every week it's here's the plan now. So
yeah, and I need a break. I haven't had there hadn't been a break since. We started tax season 2019 back in January, and we were in tax season when March hit with COVID. So it has not stopped until I can't even remember. But it'd be nice if they just kind of Congress and everybody just took a little break here and gave us some time to breathe. A lot of CPAs out there. So, I just give our industry a shout out. The CPA community, they've been a lot of them out there have been working tirelessly for the financial health of their clients and in their communities. And so we kind of not looking for any shout out or anything like that, but they've been working hard behind the scenes for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to see what I can do about lobbying for like a CPA golf assistance day or something. Maybe part of that next package.
That'd be nice. Hey, this has been kind of a little break for me, so I appreciate having me on today.
Well, I imagine your phone's been stacking up calls over there, so I'm going to let you get back to work. Anybody out there who has not checked out your website, you want to send them over there? I know you have so many great resources on there, the podcasts, you have like a university program. Tell me a little bit about what's on your website before I let you go.
Yeah, so we have, we have hundreds of media resources, articles, videos. We're constantly putting stuff out there. So there's subscribe to the YouTube channel or anything like that to get those videos updated when we push them out. But, our services, who we are, all that good stuff. And, of course, you can schedule a call with me there just by going to schedule a call at link at the very top of the homepage, and be happy to take your call, see what we can do to help you. And, so Will, I appreciate you having me on today. It's been a pleasure, and always a pleasure to work with Pioneer. Obviously, most of our clients are with Pioneer, and that is our preferred vendor, I might add, with when we're doing the accounting side of things. So you guys do a great job there.
Yeah, we happen to have some really, really great reports and great financial support staff here too at PioneerRx. For anybody that's listening that isn't on PioneerRx yet. So also want to make sure everybody knows it's Sykes. Just go to Google, look up Sykes Company, and you'll find the Facebook page and the YouTube page and all that fun stuff. I'll let you get back to it. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully I'll see you soon out on the trade show circuit.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to get back out there.
All right. Tell everybody we said hi, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Will. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond the Scripts, presented by the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please support our channel by liking, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so that you'll be notified anytime we post new content. To stay up to date with all of the latest independent pharmacy news and content, follow PioneerRx on your preferred social media platform.